Last week was tough for GB News, but this week's turning out better for them. At a gala dinner for Conservative Democratic Organisation, that's a right-wing faction in the Tory party, former Home Secretary Priti Patel said this.
I do also want to welcome some more friends here tonight. Our friends that are here, the newest, most successful, most dynamic, no-nonsense news station, and the defenders of free speech. That is my friends at GB News. Thank you for everything that you do. Just incredible. Honestly, just incredible. Don't look embarrassed. I know you're not shrinking, Violet. Thank you for absolutely everything you do, because, this isn't breaking news, but I think it's fair to say that our country needed a new disruptor when it came to the broadcast media to take on the establishment, the Tory-hating, Brexit-bashing, free speech deniers at the BBC and the so-called mainstream media.
Another MP to lavish praise on GB News was former Prime Minister Liz Truss. At a Tory fringe event, she addressed GB News business editor Liam Halligan and said this.
Thank you very much, Liam. Thank you for all you do. And thank you for your work on GB News. Because in my view, we need more economics journalism and we need more GB News. Challenging the orthodoxy, broadcasting common sense and transforming our media landscape. So long may it continue.
So why are ambitious Tories being quite so effusive towards GB News, even after recent controversies? Well, they seem to think support from the station might be key to the leadership election that would follow a Tory defeat at the next general election, and they have good reason to. Not only is GB News popular among the Tory base, its owner, Paul Marshall, is planning a bid for the Telegraph newspaper. So if he owned GB News and the Telegraph, that would mean the outlets owned by the Brexit-backing hedge fund manager would have enormous reach among the Tory selectorate. Ash, we've sort of very recently seen the resignation, the standing down of Rupert Murdoch. He was the kingmaker when it came to British politics, at least on the Conservative side of the equation. Could Paul Marshall be the new Murdoch if he's owning the Telegraph and GB News? Clearly, there's a lot of ambitious Tories who want to be on his side.
Potentially. I think the one thing that is for certain about GB News is that disproportionately people who watch it will be on the right politically. Many of them will be members of the Conservative Party. So if you want to make your pitch directly to the selectorate, also you want to be able to do so in a way where you're not going to be interviewed by the most hard-hitting journalists that the media industry have to offer. I mean, you might even be interviewed by a fellow Tory MP. GB News would be the place to go. And I think that this also indicates where the runners and riders think the centre of gravity is going to be within the Conservative Party. As I said before, it's not going to be amongst the kind of, technocrats, I'm going to be doing, my after-dinner speech at JP Morgan. That's where power is. They think they're going to have to take a much more populist, right-wing, authoritarian, nationalistic bent in order to win over the selectorate of the Conservative Party membership. And also, I think, to regain something of a political purpose with the orientation of the party. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be representing the financial interests of those massive banks and all those hedge funds, but it just means that their public-facing pitch is going to be something very, very different indeed. I think that we could be seeing something which is quite similar to, the likes of Giorgia Meloni in Italy, defining your premiership by being tough on migration, and tough on migration. It's something which is deeply regressive and unafraid, I think, of wielding quite draconian uses of state power to crack down on those who are deemed undesirable, whether those are, sexual minorities or ethnic minorities. GB News has proved itself to be much less squeamish than, say, Sky News or the BBC when it comes to parroting that line. And the right consider it part of their political communications infrastructure. And I know that GB News is something we've been talking about a lot on Novara Live. And I suppose this is the key question, which is, facing those of us who are part of left media, which is, do you interact with GB News like it's Sky News? Or do you interact with GB News like it's part of right-wing political communications infrastructure? And even if it is, and it gets very big, what do you do with that? I think that it could play a role in warping the overall tenor of the media landscape, the way that the Sun and the News of the World did in terms of newspapers.
I think it certainly will. I don't think there's any disagreement on the front of whether that's the role it's playing. I think the difference is whether there's any point in engaging with it, or whether it causes any damage to engage with it, or whether it's helpful to speak to that audience as well. But I've got no doubt in my mind that GB News is part of the infrastructure of the conservative right wing, and that's what they're intending to use it for.